I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Friday. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Misty Winston. She's probably the most popular Assange activist that I know. Misty, welcome back. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. It's good to be back. I feel like we haven't talked in a long time, so it probably hasn't even really been that long, but feels like forever. A lot's happened. I think that's just what it is. There's too much going on.
So much going on. And speaking of that, I'm sure you heard the recent news about Julian Assange. So for those who are not aware, you're not going to believe this, but after all these years,
it just makes me laugh a little.
After all these years, journalists push Biden to free Julian Assange. Now, this is coming from mainstream media. I'm not talking about independent journalists here. So I just want to read this little tidbit here. And it says that on November 28th, the editors and publishers of 5 international media outlets released a joint letter under the title "Publishing is Not a Crime," calling on the U.S. government to end its prosecution of Julian Assange. The date was significant. 12 years prior, on November 28th, 2010, the same 5 newspapers, the New York Times, The Guardian, Le Monde, El País, and Der Spiegel,
yeah,
each published revelations in cooperation with WikiLeaks that made headlines around the globe. So, Misty, I have to get your take on this because, granted, this is after the Assange rally happened in DC, but there was also that same day there was a huge Assange rally in the UK where people joined hands around the parliament. I think there was like over 5,000 people there. Why do you feel this is happening now? Do you feel maybe that public pressure was pushed on them, onto these media outlets, or do you feel there's something else going on here?
I mean, I'm always suspicious. I think that there's no question that you have to give credit to people who have been doing an immense amount of work to change like public consciousness on this issue. And we are starting to see that is shifting. Like we are starting to see where a lot of the smear campaigns that publications like the New York Times and like The Guardian have been helping to perpetuate for the past decade plus. That stuff's starting to fall away. We're starting to get more effective at combating a lot of the misinformation. And I just think that just generally, I think that once people are introduced to what's actually happening to Julian Assange and not like the noise, it's really easy to turn somebody into a supporter. Because it's very basic. But yes, I think that public pressure is for sure, but I'm always suspicious of other things that may be happening. That there could be there's always ulterior motives, right? There's always an agenda being pushed. So the trick is just trying to figure out how you walk that line and use these things to your advantage while also pushing back where it needs to be pushed back and still raise support and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm really curious as well. And I'm also wondering too, do you think that he has heard this news? Because I'm not sure how often his family gets to visit him.
I would say probably. I mean, because the letter came out on, what was it, Monday, I think, because Sunday was the 4-year anniversary of the Paul Manafort story being published in The Guardian, which we can get into in a bit. But and then Monday was the 12-year anniversary of the release of Cablegate, which is the 5. Just, I mean, you already kind of mentioned it here, but just to give context, the 5 signatories of this open letter of support were the 5 publishing partners of Cablegate. So these are all publications who publish the exact same stuff as WikiLeaks. I mean, they were publishing partners. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that he's, being held in Belmarsh prison and being persecuted, and they're not that I'm saying I want somebody from the New York Times in jail. I'm just saying that he shouldn't be in jail for. That's what he's in jail for, and it's crazy. Prison. But yeah, so that's the context of it. So Monday was the 12-year anniversary of the release of Cablegate. And so that's where these 5 signatories came out, which, listen, it's good. I'm not like angry that these people came out in support of Julian Assange. It's always good when Assange is being talked about in mainstream media. It doesn't get enough coverage. You know that. I mean, you guys are one of, even in independent media, you and RBN are some of the few people that I don't have to like badger about it. You know what I mean? It gets very little coverage. So I'm always happy when it's talked about in mainstream press and when it's trending on Twitter and when it's, all of that stuff is great. But we also have to keep realistic about who these assholes are, right? The Guardian in particular has been smearing Assange for over a decade. They are a huge part of the reason why he is where he is. And there needs to be accountability for that. They just can't come out 12 years later and be like, yeah, we kind of support it. And even in the letter of support, Sabby, they smear him. Sorry, I'm going to rant.
Go ahead.
in the letter of support, there's like a paragraph where they talk about, and I'm paraphrasing here, each of these 5 publications, the ones that signed on to this letter, each of us, openly expressed our concerns about Julian Assange's conduct and in releasing unredacted cables. And Julian Assange didn't do that. It was 2 Guardian journalists. To the Guardian, they signed on to this letter with this paragraph where they're smearing him for the unredacted cable release. And that was David Lee and Luke Harding, who published the encryption key in its entirety in a book. And but then in this letter, they're smearing Julian Assange for doing that. And it's just not a reality. It's not what happened. So it's very, to me, it's the height of, it's just the lack of self-awareness and the revision of history. And it needs to be called out. It needs to be called out. I don't think that these people should get a pass in any way, shape, or form.
That's right. Another thing they went on to say is a month ago in October, at the same time he was prosecuting Assange, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that the Justice Department would formally ban the use of subpoenas, warrants, and court orders to seize reporters' communication records or demand their notes or testimony in an effort to uncover confidential sources in leak investigations. He boldly stated that the new regulations recognize the crucial role that a free and independent press plays in our democracy. Because freedom of press requires that members of the news media have the freedom to investigate and report the news, the new regulations are intended to provide enhanced protection to members of the news media from certain law enforcement tools and actions that might unreasonably impair news gathering. Now, one of the things that I heard too is that they're afraid that by prosecuting him under the Espionage Act, that it may set a dangerous precedent. How do you feel about that?
Of course it does. He will be the first journalist ever charged under the Espionage Act. It destroys, like, we don't really have press freedom now, but this destroys any illusion of it. The fact that RBN can do it does. The fact that the gray zone can do it does. The United States, with this persecution, if we're being real, is the United States seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism. That's really what this case boils down to. It's not about Assange. It's not about, it's so much bigger than that. And, the idea that this really does it sets a precedent that I don't think we can come back from. Honestly, that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it really does impact everything else that we're doing. I mean, if you're an environmentalist, if you want better education, if you want, if you're a 2A guy, if you're whatever it is that you care about, you can't fight for it without press freedom, free speech, at least the little slivers that we're clinging to right now. And we're very quickly losing them. So yes, it does set an incredibly dangerous precedent moving forward. And people need to also remember that what makes that so particularly terrifying is that they get to define what is a journalist, what is journalism,
Yep.
And that means it could come for anybody. I mean, if you have a blog and you publish something that they don't like or that embarrasses them, it could come for you. If you tweet, you could be labeled as a journalist. You know what I'm saying? Like
Nope.
this is such a power grab, and it's yeah. Again, it's just one of those things that I don't think we can afford to lose this one. That's just my opinion. I mean, people it will come for me, but that's fine. To me, I think that this is one we can't afford to lose.
That's right. And it kind of reminds me of, for people who are not aware, for those of you that are not on Twitter, there's another situation that's happening right now, like literally right now. So right before I went live, I saw this and I was like, holy crap. So right now, even Matt Taibbi is sending out a large Twitter thread revealing some of the stories that Twitter has been hiding or that Twitter has chosen not to release. So he started off as this thread says thread the Twitter files, and it's really long, but one of the stories is the Twitter files part 1, how and why Twitter blocked the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Which we
And
all
so,
knew it was doing. I mean,
yep,
anybody paying attention, we knew that was happening. But now here's admission. Yes, that happened.
exactly. Now this is confirmed. And Elon Musk is a part of this too, from what I understand, because this didn't happen when Elon Musk bought Twitter. This happened before. And so Matt Taibbi is right now, he's still tweeting, by the way, a long thread about some of the corruption that's been happening with Twitter, how like political parties also have had a say about the content that can be posted on Twitter. They've also had a say about which celebrities can say certain things and who can be removed. See, when I tell you guys, like, you have to follow the money. You have to see who's at the top and who's really making all these decisions. Because a lot of times people are like, well, Mark Zuckerberg censored me or Elon Musk censored me, but who told them to do
The
it?
United
So you
States
always have
government
to
is
follow that.
censoring people. This is what makes me angry about this whole, because everybody tries to say, oh, well, Twitter's a private company. They can do whatever they want. That's garbage. There's no gray space between Twitter and our government. None. Zero. Zip. I mean, with Elon, it might be slightly, I don't know. I think Elon's just another billionaire. He's another distraction. He's, you know what I mean? He's definitely not some free speech warrior that's going to save us all, right? But we know for sure. We've seen it. They have gone on national television and asked social media companies to censor you. They can't do that. And people, it's just happening. Like we know that they are actively engaging with Twitter and with Facebook and with all the other social media companies, and they are working to censor narratives that that don't go with the official narrative on so many things. And the fact that more people are not angry about that and are not demanding that cease, and are the people who run cover for it, well, oh, they're a private company, they can do what they want. Stop that. That's ridiculous. They're no longer private companies. They are like full subsidiary of the United States government at this point. It's bad.
That's right. That's right. And now you get to see all these things that are happening behind the scenes, because Matt goes on to say celebrities and unknowns alike could be removed or reviewed at the behest of a political party.
That's
Like,
not
all of
okay.
it's coming out.
Yeah.
All of it. All the things that we thought were happening, but
Are
I don't know
happening.
about you, I
It's
didn't have
worse.
proof.
Yeah, it's worse. It's worse than, I mean, really, even that I thought, and I'm pretty doom and gloom about it. You know what I mean? Like it is just, I say it all the time, we're fucked. Like we're fucked. It's bad. And it just keeps getting worse, and everybody seems like, and then everybody wants to fight about Kanye. It's making my head spin. You know what I mean? Like yes, it is really bad. The United States government is, this is a massive monument. And this goes along with the Assange thing. They want full control over the narrative. They want to manufacture your reality for you, essentially.
That's right.
That's pretty
That's right.
terrifying.
That's another reason why, for people who are not aware, that's one of the reasons why YouTube changed their algorithm. That's why it's harder for you to find independent media. And you'll see like CNN and Fox News and ESPN, like they're pushed up in the algorithm. And also, why are they on YouTube anyway?
Right.
Like
Well, and that's what's so frustrating about this is that, people talk about fascism all the time, right? Like I'm called a fascist. I'm sure you've been called a fascist. And people talk about that all the time. And there's like Antifa. Where are you on this? Like this is legitimate fascism. The same people that own your media, own your government. There is like, it's all like a big pharma being able to advertise on your news. Boeing, who you in the, let me ask you, Sabrina, are you in the market for like a fighter jet?
I am not.
Well, I guess Boeing advertising on CNN. Nobody's buying Boeing's products. You know what I'm saying? Except for the military industrial complex. But they do that so that they own the narrative. And it's getting worse, progressively worse. They're now taking complete control over social media and the algorithms and all of that stuff. And I get called a conspiracy theorist, but it's happening right in front of us. It's happening.
That's
Julian
right.
Assange is a huge part of that. That's, you know what I mean? Like that is a huge kind of turning point, the Assange case.
That's right. And you have to worry about safety too. Wary, thank you so much for this. Says Hope Matt has taken precautions for his safety. No
Yes.
joke. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. I think he knows that though. Matt's a pretty smart guy. He's friends with Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald had to have security for some time. Probably still does and should. Yeah, that's what sucks is that there's such a lack of support for journalists and for truth tellers, which is always really depressing to me. What we seem to do, I don't mean to like, I realize I might be sounding a little preachy, but what we seem to do is we support truth tellers like 30, 40 years too late. You know what I mean? Like we don't support them in real time. We support them like now. Daniel Ellsberg is fairly celebrated, right? Would have been cool if people had supported him in real time. Same thing with like Chelsea Manning. People are now starting to turn Ed Snowden. You know what I mean? Public approval is starting to come around on these, but we need to support those people in real time.
That's right.
And that's just not
That's
what we
right.
do. It's unfortunate.
That's right. CEB Applejack said I heard
Yes.
Aussie PM lobbying for Assange.
Can I rant about that for a moment?
Do it.
Because it's something else I'm also really kind of angry about. So Anthony Albanese, for those of you who don't know, is the Prime Minister of Australia. He took office maybe a little over a year ago. And prior to getting elected, he was asked about Julian Assange, and he, again, paraphrasing here, enough is enough. This needs to come to a conclusion, blah, 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 blah. So the Assange team, family, everybody, Assange supporters were cautiously optimistic because I was as always, very cynical. He's a politician. But they thought that maybe we were going to have somebody who was kind of actually going to do what they say and actually put some pressure on the United States. He did not. So it's been a year. He usually dodges the question entirely. He hasn't really spoken on it. I think one time he was asked and he said something to the effect of, we can't always use our loudhailer, which is what Australians call megaphones. Something like we can't always use our loudhailers. Some things require quiet diplomacy, which is the last thing that this case needs. Like it's been going on kind of in silence for a very long time. It needs all the megaphones. Like everybody needs to be screaming about it. So for like a year, he was pretty silent. And then I guess that would have been yesterday. One of the Monique Ryan, who's an MP in Australia, finally asked him in a formal setting what he intended to do for Julian Assange. And he gave some lame ass weak answer about how he doesn't support Julian Assange. But this needs to come to a conclusion or whatever, which listen, again, like with the Washington or with the New York Times and the Guardian and Der Spiegel and all of them, I'm happy when this is talked about, right? It's the fact that he made a comment gets it talked about, and that's always good. But this is a weak ass answer. You know what I mean? He doesn't like, it's the whole, I don't like Assange, but, and we don't care if you like Assange. He needs to take a very firm position on press freedom, really. And the fact that this is an Australian citizen who he is completely just left, he's being tortured to death. And you don't have anything to say about that. Like he's being murdered in slow motion. And Anthony Albanese has nothing to say about that. But he claims now that he has brought it to, I think he said American officials. We don't know who that is. We don't know to what extent he said anything or how like firm he was on the issue. He could have just said Assange's name and he could, feasibly say that he brought it up. So I don't know. I don't even know if he really did. He doesn't see, but it is what it is. And so again, I've said it a million times, politicians are not going to save Julian Assange. The media is not going to save Julian Assange. It's going to take mass public pressure from people. They've all screwed him over. The court system is surely not going to save him. it really is going to have to like people.
That's right. That's right. And that's why like a lot of these protests are so important. I think, going to the protest in DC, like for me, like that was a amazing experience.
I
Like it
love
was
our events. I'm biased, but I love our events. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
amazing experience. And I feel like, I was like, wow, it's a lot of people,
I know, I'm
like
so
there was
happy.
more people there than there were at the march last year, at least here from Medicare for All. There were
I
more
was
people.
so happy because honestly, that's the by far the biggest turnout that we've had, and it always makes me sad. I get it, like especially it's like the time of the of COVID and all of that stuff and lockdowns, and so getting people out was obviously going to be difficult anyways. Also, travel's really expensive, and people have two jobs and they're trying to raise kids, and so I get like but it is just always depressing because these are things that we need to be in the streets about and we need to
Yep.
be coming together about, and it's really hard to get people to come out to events. And so the idea, and I mean, obviously it was bolstered by the fact that London was doing their massive event, like you mentioned earlier, where there was, 5 to 7,000 people surrounding Parliament. That's never been done before. I mean, how cool is that? And weird. Nobody's ever thought of doing that before. It's kind of weird. But it was the first time apparently. And so our event was obviously bolstered by what they were doing as well. But we were kind of on our own in terms of hyping it up and getting our own speakers and all of that stuff. And it was like the turnout was amazing. I'm not like I keep saying, I'm not lying. I got emotional when we first started marching and I saw that yellow ribbon and
Mm-hmm.
all of these people. And I'm like, this is amazing. And we lost Eric this year. So I was like thinking about Eric and how cool, like he would have loved that. You know what I mean? And I really did get emotional. It was really cool. And I'm hoping that we can continue to build on that and to capitalize on and to maintain kind of momentum for that. Because like it doesn't stop with Assange, right? We need people to be engaged in this, um, you know, for journalism, period. I mean, it's like getting justice for Shireen Abu Akleh, or you know what I mean, like getting Daniel Hale out of prison. We need to get getting Leonard Peltier out of prison. We need to get him out of prison. Mumia, we need to get him out of prison. Like, there's a lot of political prisoners. There's a lot of other fights to fight, and so like we need to maintain that kind of momentum, and it's hard. It's really, really hard.
It
But we can't do
really
any of those
is.
things unless we have the ability to speak and we have like press freedom and stuff. So I feel like that this is like the front line for me, you know?
I also think it helped having someone like Roger Waters, who has like a huge
Yes.
platform, also being a voice for Assange as well. Like that, some people are just going to a Pink Floyd concert because they like Pink Floyd and they just
Yeah.
want to hear the songs. But while they're there, they get another message.
Yes. And Roger Waters let us, Assange Defense, organize with the Roger Waters camp. And we were able to set up a table at every single Roger Waters action in the United States, or every concert in the United States. So myself and Andrew did Cleveland and Columbus. So we just went, we set up a table, we handed out flyers, we talked to people, we gave out like stickers and stuff. And obviously, Julian Assange was featured in Roger Waters' show,
Yeah.
which was really cool because being in that room surrounded by people, and then he puts up onto the screen in giant like red and white, I think it's like red background with white lettering, "Free Julian Assange," and the crowd erupted. That was like, and like right before that, he said something about Chelsea Manning. Everybody cheered for that as well. Like, it was just so cool to be in that space and realize, because I mean, sometimes you can get kind of like kind of bogged down by how hard it is, and you kind of forget, because I mean, you deal with misinformation and trolls and all of that stuff, and you don't realize how much support there really genuinely is for this. And then to be in a space like that that's filled with people who are like cheering for Assange and for Chelsea Manning is so good. It was good for my soul.
Have you had a chance to talk to, or do you know if anyone has had a chance to talk to Chelsea Manning and ask her about her opinion about the Julian Assange
She won't
situation?
talk about it. It's unfortunate. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know. I don't know how much of that is that she just like maybe she's scared to talk about it. I could see that being a possibility. But she's just done, like, she said some not so nice things. I mean, not really super mean, but like just really has been kind of dismissive to what Julian is going through, and won't talk about it. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I still have obviously tremendous amount of respect for her, but I do wish that she would talk about it more. I mean, it's a very small club to be targeted like that, and she
Right.
knows what that is. And it would be nice to see some solidarity somewhere in there, but there isn't any. So it's a little weird.
That's interesting considering what she's been through.
Yeah, it's sad. It makes me sad, honestly. I mean, I don't want it to be like it makes. I don't want to say it makes me lose respect for her, but it kind of does. And I don't know
Mhm.
her reasons, so I try to like give her benefit of the doubt because she's been through a lot.
Mhm.
But it also, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it does make me a little bit angry. Not angry, but disappointed. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. And yes,
Interesting.
Mary, what's happening to Assange is, I say all the time that I liken Julian Assange. He's the proverbial head on a stake outside the castle walls.
Yep.
That's what he is. He is, and it's been a very effective message already. I think we all have seen the state of journalism recently. It's not great. And that is in large part because of the Julian Assange situation. And that's why we don't have as many whistleblowers, because of the Chelsea Manning situation.
Yep.
And so, yes, it is absolutely a warning to whistleblowers, to journalists, to truth tellers, to any dissent whatsoever. That is their way of saying, if you come for us, this is what we will do to you.
That's right. That's right. Well, Misty, thank you so much. Again, I love your efforts. Like I said, you're one of the biggest Assange like
I'm
supporters
just
that
the
I know.
loudest. That's all. I'm just the loudest. Can I just mention really quickly that December 10th is International Human Rights Day. So everybody look forward to your hypocritical tweets from Kamala Harris and Anthony Blinken about human rights. It'll be fun. It'll be so good. The CIA will probably put out a tweet about international human rights. It's going to be fun. That'll be funny, entertaining to say the least. However, on December 10th, around the world, Assange supporters, I know that there's an effort in London. I think they're going to be outside Belmarsh. I was going to do something, but I've been trying to like just chill for a little bit. I needed some time to just chill. But I know there's one in Tulsa. I think Denver's doing something. Boston's doing something. Everybody, I think it's Lanterns for Assange, the number 4. That's the hashtag they're using. So even if you can't like go somewhere, if you like light a candle or a lantern for Julian Assange on December 10th, you can take a picture, tweet it out with that hashtag. That helps stir up the algorithm. And especially right now, I feel like we need to capitalize on that. And this kind of like the press that we've been getting, because it's very rare. And also just because of the newspapers coming out and with their letter of support or whatever, we did also see a smaller publication, Pasadena Star News. I think, I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. Actually, yeah, I wrote it down. Pasadena Star News. So smaller publication outside of Pasadena, California. They put out an article saying that they would like to add their name to the support of Julian Assange. So something else you could do right now is write letters to your local newspapers, your local TV stations, and very politely implore them. Send them the New York Times thing. Say, look, all of these major publications are coming out in support of Julian Assange. As a reader of your newspaper, I would like to see you guys put yourselves out there in support as well. That could be huge. If we can get that to snowball, that would be major.
Yes.
So those are 2 things you can do. Oh, and you can also call. I started doing that again this week because we're getting this attention. So if you go to my Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust, I have a graphic that has the 2 numbers for the Department of Justice. You can call and leave them a message, politely tell them that they need to drop the charges. You don't have to be like super polite, but polite enough, right? Like, don't yell. But yeah, you can do that. And also I have one out for Leonard Peltier as well. His camp is making another hardcore push. So I had Big Mad Crab update my graphic for me. So there's another graphic. And that one, I think most likely just call the White House, ask for a pardon. I mean, we're 45 years into that one. So I think we just need to get him out. So yeah, if you can call the White House, I have a graphic up for Peltier with the number for that. And then Assange, call the Department of Justice and ask them to drop the charges. Right. Okay, sorry. Those are 3 things that you can do right now. Very easy, very quick. You can do that. Everybody can do that, right?
That's right. That's right. I was going to say December 10th. That might be the same thing I'm going to. December 10th, there is an anti-war. There's a couple of things attached to this protest, but there's an anti-war protest I'm supposed to go to December 10th, Saturday. And then following that is the webinar with Jill Stein, which I'll be at that as well.
Yeah,
so I think it's the same thing.
I'll get you in touch with Paula. Paula's the one that she would hate. She's like me. She would hate if I say that she runs the Boston Assange group, but she's like she runs it. I love Paula. But I can get you in touch with her and you can because I mean, that's your area. So they do stuff all the time. Like every other week they're out there. So, I mean, I can definitely get you in contact with them. So if you're in the Boston area, there's a great group there. Go.
That would be great because I missed Julian Assange dad. He was here and I found out I think the day before and I was like, oh shoot.
He's
I was
so
like,
nice.
I can't.
But if you ever have him on your show, make sure your audio is really good because he's very soft spoken.
Okay.
He's very quiet. I remember I forget who it was, but somebody did one of the home run for Julian events last summer and they didn't have like a microphone or a megaphone. And I'm like, oh no, nobody could hear.
Yeah, because they wanted to do it. They wanted to do it in person. Boston for Assange wanted to do it in person. I was like, oh no, I can't get there in time because of like other obligations. But I was like, shoot.
Yeah.
And then I got to try to see if I can get him again.
They'll be back. Yeah. They're coming back because they have Ithaca, the new documentary that his brother Gabriel co-produced. So they did a New York release of that. I'm sure that they're going to do. They toured Europe and Australia, showing it at different venues. So I'm sure they'll probably do that in the United States too. So yeah, hopefully they'll do one in Boston. But yeah, thanks for having me on and letting me give people some ideas. Everybody make a phone call. Send an email to a newspaper, and then December 10th, post your pictures for us, please. Please and thank you.
Thank you so much, Misty. And where can people find you? Sarcasm Stardust on Twitter, and where else?
That's really about it right now. Like I have shows, but I have been like I said, kind of on break. I'm making some random appearances on like my friends' school shows. That's about all I'm doing right now. But yeah, I'm a prolific tweeter. You can find me on Twitter all the time at Sarcasm Stardust. And if you want to know about Assange, I tweet about it a lot. So there's definitely a good place to get some information.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Misty.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All righty. All right, guys. Yeah, I know. She's awesome. Like, I got to tell you guys, like, most of the things that I know about the Julian Assange situation is because of her, is because of Misty. So she's educated me a lot throughout almost 2 years now, out the past 2 years. So yes, indeed. I'm gonna shout out some of these comments here really quick, and then we'll get to the thumbnail and discuss what else we're going to talk about tonight, and shout out patrons as well. But yes, I saw someone mention earlier, protect Matt Taibbi at all costs. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat, CEB. Misty and Sabby, love this stream already. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super chat, Delthea. Hey, y'all. And the only way Congress should intervene in union talks is on the side of workers. If you haven't had a chance to do so, take that poll. It's pinned to the top of the live chat, and I'll reveal the results at the end. After we go through this railroad strike story, the voting results, we're going to get into all of that tonight because I got a big breakdown. Thank you for the super sticker, JM. And thank you for the super chat, CEB. Thanks, Misty, and everything you do, and Sabby. And thank you for the super chat, Terry. Thank you, Sabby, for your work. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. But wait, there's more. All right. What are we talking about tonight? Let's go ahead and show the thumbnail. I told you guys this week has been crazy in reference to news. And like one of the hardest tasks that I have is deciding which stories I'm going to talk about. So that's the hardest part about what I do here. But tonight we are going to discuss the squad splits. Yikes, the vote. And Joe Manchin fails. Why are we not surprised with that? We're going to talk about all the players in the game. We're also going to discuss Hakeem Jeffries wins minority leader position. I got some things to reveal there as well. Also, a recent announcement that came out from him yesterday, which may be surprising to some of you. I'm also going to discuss Joe Biden, South Carolina change. That is huge for those of you who are interested in these early primary voting states. And of course, Misty was just here to talk about the media, mainstream media backs Julian Assange. Okay, let's shout out Sabby patrons really quick. Thank you guys so much for your support. You know, you're always doing the damn thing. If you're interested in being a Sabby member, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their name scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker there. It's just trucking away. I really do appreciate it, guys. It really does help keep the lights on around here. And we want to shout out a new Sabby patron. Let's give it up for James Papano. Whoop, 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 whoop. Again, thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate it. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into it. We're going to get started off with this story here about this change that Joe Biden is trying to implement, because I want to get your take on this. I want to see how you feel about it. Now, when it comes to the states that are part of early primary voting, I've had my own criticism about those states. So I'll just jump on in and tell you what they are. I didn't understand why it was Iowa and New Hampshire. Now, I did find out something recently as to why it's those 2 states that appear first, but I didn't like that. You know, now I've never been to Iowa, but I've been to New Hampshire multiple times. And I can tell you that when you look at a state like New Hampshire, it is not representative of the majority of the people in the country. It's just not representative. So it's like the voices that you get first are coming from New Hampshire and Iowa and what they want in a presidential candidate. And all the other voices just seem to get washed out. Like, that was the thing I noticed. Like, you're not getting opinions of people that are in places like, I don't know, New Mexico, or places like Virginia, for example. And I just never understood why it was those 2 states in particular, but I'm going to explain that to you tonight. But first, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip, because he's been doing the damn thing. And I didn't know about this until I saw this clip. But yes, Joe Biden is trying to make changes in reference to the early voting primaries for a presidential election. Believe it or not, he's trying to do this. I don't know if it's going to pass. I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but you need to know what is possible. Let's get into it.
I am curious about President Biden's proposal of changing the order in which primaries are conducted, hoping to have South Carolina go first. We realize this is during a week, of course, when Congressman Jim Clyburn spoke about needing representation of the South in leadership. What do you make of the prospects of this being a successful proposal?
Okay, before we get into that, I want to look at this map one more time. I was about to say one more again. There was a song that goes, one more again, where the booty at? Whoop, there it is. One more again, where the booty at? Whoop, there it is. All right. Now, if you look at this map here, you can see these are the early primary states. Now, this is in order, right? So you can see here, this is what they're trying to change. Typically, South Carolina is not the first early primary state. Like I told you, it's New Hampshire and Iowa. He's trying to change that. He wants to make South Carolina first. After South Carolina, Nevada, New Hampshire, Georgia, and then Michigan. Notice Iowa is not represented. Would this change the Kano's laughing. You like my dance there, Kano? Would this change things? Yes, it probably could. Because again, the demographics are different in those states compared to New Hampshire and Iowa. That is what I think he's trying to do here. Here's the thing. If you're a Democrat and you're running for president, this plan is going to work out really well for you. Because if South Carolina is first, that is a state that has a large African-American population. You need the African-American vote in order to win the Democrat ticket. So if that is first and that is representative, that could actually help you a lot versus you going to a place like Iowa and trying to win over people in Iowa or New Hampshire. Same thing. So this is the plan. This is what he wants to do. He wants to change it so that the states that actually have more, I guess I would say more minorities, would go first, South Carolina and then Nevada. But again, this favors Democrat candidates. If you're a Republican candidate, this probably won't favor. Well, no, South Carolina would still help you because it still is a red state. Georgia is kind of purplish now. We're trying to figure this out. So I guess if you're a Republican, that would still help you. But look at it this way. What if Republicans came back and said, we want Texas to be one of the early primary voting states? That probably wouldn't pass, right? That probably would not happen. They'd be like, oh, hell no. That's a shoo-in for you guys. But I am wondering how much of a difference this could make. And do you guys feel that this is the way to go? Let's go on.
We realize this is during a week, of course, when Congressman Jim Clyburn spoke about needing representation of the South in leadership. What do you make of the prospects of this being a successful proposal?
It's really interesting because all these states are clamoring. You've got Michigan in the mix, you've got Georgia in the mix, you've got Nevada in the mix. And so I think this is the start of a conversation. It does not look like something that's going to be easily settled because no matter what, there are going to be states that are making the case. I think there is a strong case, though, for South Carolina, for a state from the South where, there's a big population center that's not currently represented in the early states. There are much more diverse states than what we currently have as our first states that are more representative of the demographics of America now. So it's clear that there will be a shift, but I don't know if Biden's proposal is just going to be accepted easily. There might be a little bit of a fight first.
And the point to have Black voters assumingly have their way in earlier. That's the point.
Yeah.
Excellent point here, not just knowing. They want to start with South Carolina to remind us ex-Bernie supporters that this was the moment we raw dogged you and your movement. It's interesting, too. I played a video of Jim Clyburn earlier today on RBN from 2 years ago, where he was actually saying that the voters in South Carolina, don't want democratic socialism. They don't want a Bernie Sanders, which is interesting because he got second place running there. And I said that's not necessarily true, but he was saying that the voters here that are Democrats are more moderate, those types of voters. And so that's an interesting point that you brought up there, not just knowing, because think about it this way. If this were 2020 all over again, I hate to take you back there, but it's happening. If this were 2020 all over again, and it was Bernie and Biden again, and South Carolina was the first state, then Joe Biden takes the lead right from the get-go. See how that works? What is that blue moon red wine? It should start in Michigan. That way we skip the whole dramatic lead until what will happen there. LOL. That's a good point. That's a good point. But things would have been very different, right? Been very different. And so that's something that we do have to keep in mind. But let's go back into the clip here.
Well, to have the early states be states that look more like America and aren't so, Iowa, not only is it not the most diverse state, but the way it conducts primaries are kind of out of step with the vast majority of the U.S. states. So it just, seems like a relic of a time that doesn't really reflect American politics now, especially on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
But diversity doesn't necessarily equal Democrat. And Delthea just brought up a good point. I think I started here. This is something we got to talk about. South Carolina is a very conservative state across the board. South Carolina is a red state. Large African-American population, but it is a red state. Now, you do get pockets of blue in Columbia, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. That's mainly, a lot of that is coming from the younger population, the college students that are there, because I went to the University of South Carolina. So you do have those pockets of blue. But what I have noticed, and this seems to be a problem across the board, not just South Carolina, a lot of the younger voters that support the more progressive candidates, when it comes time to vote, they don't show up in numbers. And I'll use the example of Bernie Sanders 2020. Large turnout when he went to the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina. Large crowds of people wanting to see and meet Bernie Sanders and cheer on Bernie. Same thing with Columbia, South Carolina. But when it came time to vote, the younger people did not show out with the numbers. People 65 and older did. South Carolina has one of the oldest electorates in the United States. It's the older voters there that are coming out in those numbers. So you have to understand, having lived in South Carolina, being a college student there, after I graduated from college, it was not a fun place to live. It was not really a place for, like, especially Columbia, South Carolina. There wasn't a lot to do for young professionals. There just wasn't. And there was a lot to do when I was a college student, because the college, they put all these events on campus. So there was a lot to do there. But when I graduated from college, that's when I realized how boring Columbia, South Carolina was. So a lot of people were like moving to Charleston, and I didn't want to live in Charleston. A lot of people were moving there, especially people really into the art scene. Charleston has a great art scene. And some people were moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, because there was more to do for like younger people. But yeah, it's hard to keep younger people there. I'm just keeping it real with you. So that's also a part of the problem. Some people see South Carolina as a state to move to when you retire, right? It's a retirement state. So yeah, there is. And I'm going to tell you, and this has nothing to do with Joe, but I'm going to tell you, if you're a young adult and you're trying to date in Columbia, like Columbia in specific, you're trying to date there, it's very difficult because, like I said, most of the people are older. And then the people who are like in your age group, it's like they're either already married, because people marry younger in the South. They're either already married, already in a relationship, or they're military and they're not going to stay. So wasn't the best. What's that, Angelique? Sounds a lot like South Florida. Yeah, I mean, it's just not a fun place for younger people, younger adults, from what I gathered. Charleston, there's a little bit more to do, but even in Charleston, for me, it was still kind of slow. Like, I don't know. I'm more of like a city person. Anywho, the younger people didn't come out. So that's a big part of the problem. But across the board, it tends to be a red state. And that's how they vote. So like Delthea's right when she says they're more conservative. I can see that. Even some of the African-American voters, because my mom did vote for Bernie Sanders, right? And she tried to get her friends to vote for Bernie Sanders. And my mom's friends, who were also African-American, and my mom's a boomer. She calls herself a boomer. My mom's friends told her, yeah, I don't like him, and I don't think that he can beat Trump, so I'm going with Biden. Or they said they felt like he was a little too extreme for them. So that's part of the problem too.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about it is if this had been the way it was set up when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were running, we might not have had a Barack Obama, because Iowa is what launched Barack Obama, this white state, right? At a time when black voters were really aligned with Hillary Clinton and were very skeptical, not because they didn't support Barack Obama, because they didn't think white people would support Barack Obama, right?
No. So I was in South Carolina when Barack Obama ran in 2008. That's actually not true. I don't know who she is, but that's actually not true. African-American voters in South Carolina heavily supported Barack Obama. Heavily supported Barack Obama. I'm just going to keep it real for you. Like, that's just, yeah, Iowa really put him up there, like really put him over the map. But I'm just telling you, even before that happened, in South Carolina, most of us wanted Barack Obama. So I don't know where she's getting this from.
They were thinking like, well, black president, is that really going to happen? And then Iowa voters were the ones that actually voted for him, and then he was on his way. And so I do think it's important to have a more diverse representation in the first votes, but it is kind of interesting how it's worked out, right? Of course, South Carolina is also, I mean, Joe Biden where would his candidacy be, right? It's like, it's just interesting. It didn't help Kamala Harris. It didn't help Cory Booker, right? Yeah.
That's because Black people weren't feeling Kamala Harris or Cory Booker. That's across the board. Remember, Kamala Harris couldn't get a delegate. She couldn't get one delegate. So I think the problem with this conversation is that they're assuming that just because the candidate is Black, that Black people are going to overwhelmingly love them. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of us liked Barack Obama before we learned our lesson. A lot of us liked Barack Obama because, number one, he was charismatic and he talked about hope and change. Kamala was easy to see through. She was not trusting. When she came to South Carolina, I remember watching this on TV. When she came to South Carolina, her crowd was not big. Okay. Barack Obama, different story. Cory Booker is another one. We don't really trust you, boo. We do not really trust you, Cory. You know, there's something about Cory Booker. It's like he gives me faulty Obama vibes. Like he is the Obama 0.2. Like he's the one that he tries to do what Obama did, but you can see through it. Whereas though Obama was better at disguising it. That's what Cory Booker reminds me of. Like the moment I saw Cory Booker speak, I was just like, and I saw him speak in New Hampshire. Me and my husband did. And there was a guy in the crowd and he said, you sound a lot like Barack Obama. You saying some of the same things that Barack Obama said when he came here. And I don't see that much difference between you two. So people were able to see past Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. So I think this is the problem with that conversation. They're assuming that just because it's a Black candidate, that Black people are going to overwhelmingly support them. If that was the case, it would have been the same way for someone like Jesse Jackson, right? When he ran, did not happen. So I think Barack Obama, one thing he did have down was he knew how to be charismatic. He knew what to say, when to say it, and he knew how to read a room. And he ran on a message of hope and change. And that actually brought a lot of younger people to come out because the youth vote, that was another thing that Barack Obama was able to get at historically Black colleges as well. So I don't know. I think, again, it's always funny to me when I watch mainstream media. It's like they have people there talking about these situations that are not actually a part of the situation, but they claim to know what those people in those situations want, you know? So it's like the woman there, I'm like, what do you know? Like, you ain't in South Carolina. You're not a part of the population. How do you know what those voters want, right? So that being said, why does Iowa and New Hampshire go first? We're going to find this out because I've always had this question and I decided to dig a little bit deeper. So here we go. Time for some education. Why Iowa and New Hampshire go first? You're going to learn something tonight, guys, if you don't know. The Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary held this year, February 9th, are seen as crucial, potentially game-changing events in the presidential nominating process. For decades, Iowa and New Hampshire have been the first states. Can you go away? Why are you there? I hate when they have these things there like that. That's just go away. No. The story of the Iowa caucus goes back to 1968 DNC. That infamous event in Chicago. Hubert Humphrey was nominated by the Democratic Party bosses who at this time were largely in control of the nominating process. The lack of democratic accountability among party elites combined with widespread frustration about President Lyndon Johnson's policies regarding the war in Vietnam culminated in chaotic protests and riots. In an attempt to avoid the public anger exerted that year, party officials changed the presidential nomination process to make it more transparent and democratically accountable. Part of the new rules established by the DNC were scheduling guidelines that required at least 30 days between major state and local political processes. In 1972, there were no available hotel rooms in Des Moines for the week when the Iowa DNC was going to be held. So it was moved up earlier in the calendar. This change, combined with the new 30-day waiting period, meant that Democratic caucus would be scheduled for January 24th, the first nominating contest of the cycle. The more you know. See, you learn something new every day. Now, let's get to New Hampshire. So that all has to do with hotel rooms not being available. And that's why it got moved up earlier in the calendar. Isn't that something just really weird? But it just happened, right? Okie doke. And then it goes on to talk about how George McGovern was the Democratic nominee. In reference to New Hampshire, the New Hampshire primary has a rich history that goes back to 1920. Since then, it has had the privilege of being the first presidential primary election in the nation, though a change in voting rules and procedures in 1949 ensured that the 1952 primary was the first time the election developed its nationwide importance. After 1968, New Hampshire lawmakers passed a law ensuring that the primary was to be held before any other similar contest, and gave state officials the power to change the date of the primary to enforce this policy. The phrase similar contest in the New Hampshire statute refers to other primary elections, but not caucuses, allowing Iowa to hold its caucus earlier than the New Hampshire primaries. While the number of delegates a candidate can win in either state is relatively small, candidates who perform well in Iowa or New Hampshire benefit from positive media coverage, early momentum, and often end up winning their party's nomination. There you go. There you go. Eric, can you put the link to that blog in the chat just in case people want to refer back to that? That's important to know. So there you go. That's how those decisions were made. I'll go ahead and get to the YouTube chats, and then I'll take the comments on Rockfin. Casey in the poll, please describe what you mean by intervene. To give paid time off or to force the MTO work against their will. Oh, I should have done that. I messed up, huh? I should have said that. I should have said to give tape. Okay, what I was referring to was the latter, to force them to go to work against their will. I should have stated it that way. Thank you so much, Casey, for asking that question. Bart, except South Carolina minorities are not representative of minorities in swing states. Truth. Wary, is this the first big change in the order of the primary since the primary system started, or have there been other major changes over the years? I'll have to look into that. This is the first one that I've heard about, but I'll have to look into that and get back to you, man. Notori, once again, Democrats want black votes, but don't do a damn thing for us. There you go. Gene, please tell me no one is falling for this shifting around the states will make our lives better. Lawrence, we got no candidates running on issues important to the people. I don't give up which state goes first. Delthea, people age into voting, and by the time young people age into voting, they are living in Boston. Oh my God, that's so true. Well said, Delthea. People move. It's true. Especially now, like my generation, like millennials and Gen Z, we're very mobile. I think this is the longest I've lived anywhere. Yeah, I've never lived in one place this long. Most of my life I've been mobile, but yeah, we're pretty mobile people, so we're not guaranteed to stick around. Blue Moon, I wonder if it would have gone the same way in South Carolina if Bernie hadn't consistently ignored stuff that matters to black voters. That was another thing that came up during Bernie Sanders' campaign. And thank you for the super chat, Roger. Oh, so it's New Hampshire Constitution, not Iowa, not New Hampshire. My bad. I'll take the comments on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip, Stargazer. Shout out. And thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. I think Iowa has in their constitution, they must be the first in the nation for primaries. Also, this was not exactly what Black people were talking about when we said we want from the Dems, despite the fact that South Carolina never goes for the Dem candidate anyway. I can never understand why the Dems would even put so much emphasis on a state they never win. You'd think they'd go with New York, California, and Michigan. Well said there. And thank you for this tip as well. Sab, I think it's hard for women in the South to date because women outnumber men there. We do. I remember graduating high school in the late 80s. All dudes kept telling me I'm going to college in the South because of the girls. Oh, yeah, education too. Wink, wink. Dudes were like in Georgia, 20 women for every guy, like crazy numbers. That in Virginia Beach, all I kept hearing back then. Why you think they're now blue? Watch South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. Yeah, well said. Yeah, we do outnumber men there. We do. Same thing when I was in college. It was like, I think they said it was 20, 21 or 25 women to every male college student or something like that. I have to go back and check. Yeah, but we did like outnumber. Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead to our next story. Now, if you have not heard, Hakeem Jeffries was up for minority leader, which would put him in charge of Dem leadership in the House, and he won. They voted for him. Now, I've told you before, Hakeem Jeffries is not in favor of progressive policies. This is not a secret. He's been vocal about it. I'm going to get into that in just a second. But first and foremost, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Here is Hakeem Jeffries here being sworn in and the future for Democrats in the House.
After nearly a decade on Capitol Hill, Brooklyn-bred attorney Hakeem Jeffries takes his own place in history.
I stand on the shoulders of people like Shirley Chisholm and so many others.
Why did he compare himself to Shirley Chisholm? You know, it's like, boy, that's a stretch, Hakeem. That's a stretch.
As we work to advance the ball for everyday Americans and get stuff done. Because that's what Democrats do.
How are you going to get stuff done when Republicans control the House? See, this is the problem that people are having with Democrat politicians. They keep going around saying we're getting things done. We're going to get things done. You need to be honest with people and just keep it real. Right now, you're not going to be able to get things done. At least for the next 2 years, right? You're not going to be able to get anything. You don't have control of the House. And I don't think I'm going to see many Republicans leaning over to your side when some of them don't even want to vote for Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. So I don't think many of them are going to lean your way. So I wish they would stop saying we're going to get things done. You don't know, you're not. It just is what it is. And these options have to pass in the House in order to make it to the Senate. So just keep that in mind.
At 52, Jeffries' ascension marks a generational change from 82-year-old outgoing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
We're going to work hard to...
Jeffries became Democratic caucus chair in 2019 and has long been known for his advocacy around affordable housing and criminal justice reform, working across the aisle in 2019 to get the First Step Act passed.
We look forward to finding opportunities to partner with the other side of the aisle.
You hear this? Everybody take note. Everybody take note. Partner with the other side of the aisle. Isn't it interesting that he's willing to work along with Republicans and partner with them, but he doesn't want to work along with the squad members for progressive policies? So you don't want to work along with people who are members of your own party, but you're willing to work along with the Republicans who are not a part of your party because they don't want progressive policies either. You guys see how this works? In other words, continuing to move the Democratic Party further and further to the right. Pay attention to that, guys.
And work with them whenever possible, but we will also push back against extremism whenever necessary.
And that means extremism on both sides. Now, he didn't say that there, so I'm going to add that in for him. That means extremism on the Democrat side and the Republican side. He's opposed to both.
But it was his role as an impeachment manager during former President Donald Trump's first impeachment trial that was among Jeffries' most high-profile posts, highlighting his background as a lawyer and his penchant for weaving in the legacy of hip-hop.
That is why we are here, Mr. Sekulow. And if you don't know, now you know.
That was so damn corny. That was so corny. It's always interesting to me how people like to, I don't know, insert Biggie and Tupac into places and spaces just to appear more cool when half the people in the room don't even know who you're talking about or what you're saying. Really interesting to me. That was corny, though. That was corny. Don't do that, Hakeem.
My constituents said, "Aren't you the congressman that shouted out Biggie Smalls on the House floor 2 years ago?" I said, "Yeah, that was me." He said, "And now I hear that you're the number 5 Democrat in the House of Representatives."
And I just want to say this. I loved Biggie Smalls' music. I love Tupac's music. But Hakeem is being a poser. He just trying to I just saw like Colin said, he's posing. Come on. Like this is not serious here. He's just trying to pose. And he was so corny about it. I don't like the corny. I don't like it. No, don't like.
How did that happen? And the only way that I could respond by quoting the Biggie Smalls lyric, which is, "You never thought that hip hop would take it this far." And so I think that Biggie Smalls, Jay-Z, in many ways, captures sort of the aspirational aspect of the American dream.
A former longtime staff.
Capitalism. The American dream. Jay-Z talked about this as well. We talked about it on RBN, a Twitter space that Jay-Z had, where he talked about, like, if I can make it, other people can too. And now people want to come up with these dirty words like capitalists and wealthy and eat the rich. That's what Jay-Z said. And he was like, no, I made my money and I'm going to keep mine. You guys should work as hard as me. That's what that's really about. So the fact that Hakeem's like, well, Jay-Z and them, they're like the American dream. Most people don't see the American dream, Hakeem. People like Jay-Z and Biggie and Tupac were outliers. Most people growing up in poverty don't get that break, don't get that chance. The American dream is only for a certain few.
Suggests Jeffries will pose a formidable challenge to Republicans.
He has a mind like a computer. He's absolutely brilliant. And so he remembers every single detail of everything. For all of his speeches, we never write his speeches out. We put it.
That doesn't mean you're going to make good decisions. I want to be clear here. Okay. There are different types of intelligence. Intelligence is not just academic intelligence. There's musical intelligence. There's emotional intelligence as well. And I want to point this out. Just because someone is intelligent, just because Hakeem Jeffries can remember everything, like he just said, that doesn't mean he's going to make the right decisions. That doesn't mean he's going to make the best choices for the American people, particularly working class people and poor people. And we've watched people make this mistake common times over and over again. They think, oh, they're a lawyer. They went to Stanford. They went to Yale. They're so smart. People said this about Colin Powell, Joe Biden, and the rest of them. He's so well-spoken, so intelligent. Said the same thing about Barack Obama. He speaks so well. Yeah. And both of them were warmongers. Just because someone is intelligent doesn't mean they're going to make the right decisions. So keep that in mind.
Together the substance, and he could just go and speak for 45 minutes.
And argues he's the right man for this moment.
In 2015, I said to him, I said, you're going to be the next Speaker of the House, because the reality of our party is that we had this old faction that was destined to leave at some point, and Hakeem was the guy that could best articulate what we stood for. And we now live in an era where that matters more than most other things.
Can't stop.
Articulate for who, though? When he says what we stood for, who's we? We who?
The reality of our party is that we had this old faction that was destined to leave at some point, and Hakeem was the guy that could best articulate what we stood for.
Who? Because if he's just talking about people who are Democrats, Democratic Party isn't even unified. They're not united. I mean, you have people like the squad that went in through the Democratic Party. You have people like Bernie Sanders saying we need these, progressive policies to pass. We want Medicare for all that kind of stuff. The Democratic Party, the majority of people in Congress that are a part of the Democratic Party don't want that. So who's we? Moderate Democrats? Corporate Democrats? Neocons? Because when he says we, I don't know, you're leaving some people. You got to be very particular there. Got to be particular.
And we now live in an era where that matters more than most other things.
Can't stop.
But Jeffries will have to contend with the left wing of the party, who view him as part of the establishment, and he's poised to take the mantle with a Democratic minority.
Notice how she worded that, who view him as part of the establishment. Because he is. He is part of the establishment. He's corporate. He takes corporate money. He's corrupt. I mean, what do you mean they view him as? No, just look at the facts. Just follow the receipts. Just look at open secrets. We went over this a couple days ago. He is corporate. He is establishment.
As the great philosopher Grace Jones said, I may not be perfect, but I'm perfect for you. So for those who claim he's not progressive enough, there are far less progressive people who could stand in his stead and try to occupy his space.
Michael's another one. I'm sorry, I paused. I'll go back for a couple of seconds, but I got to say this. Michael Eric Dyson, I have the same problem with him that I have with Robert Reich. And let me explain why. Michael and Robert, there's something that they both have in common. Both of them, they'll get on TV and they'll tell you exactly what the problems are. They'll talk about corruption. They'll talk about greed. They'll talk about issues for minority groups like Michael Dyson's. Well, he's really notorious for that. Like he'll call out all the problems that Black people have to deal with in the United States. They'll mention all the problems. Robert Reich will tell you, labor, people are exploited. There's so much corruption and greed. These companies need to give the workers rights. There's so many people at the bottom. By the way, Robert Reich ran for governor here in Massachusetts. I don't know if a lot of you guys know that. Many years ago. Anywho, they're both great at telling you exactly what the problems are. And yet, at the end, they tell you to vote for the same problems. Both of them. Both of them do it. Michael tells you, oh yeah, police brutality, terrible, terrible. Oh, don't say defund the police, vote for the Democratic Party. Robert Reich will tell you there's so much corruption and greed. These corporations are just getting over on everybody. And yeah, money in politics, yeah, that's a big problem. Vote for the Democratic Party. They don't send you down a different path. And that's worse to me, right? It's worse to me when you have the people that will point out the problems, but they still tell you to vote for the problem. They still keep you in the problem. I have a problem with people like that. So in this sense, it's kind of like what Teslin said the other night when she was saying that, like, in a sense, they're worse than, when she said the progressives are worse than the moderates. I totally get where she was coming from that, because it's like, y'all know what the problem is. You announce the problem, you talk about the problem, but you still keep people in that problem. That's him and Michael. Let's go back a little bit because he's going to make excuses for Hakeem Jeffries.
To take the mantle with a Democratic minority.
As the great philosopher Grace Jones said, I may not be perfect, but I'm perfect for you. So for those who claim he's not progressive enough, there are far less progressive people who could stand in his stead and try to occupy his space.
How do you know that? How do you know that if they haven't been given the opportunity? Like this, the Apollo said. Apollo said Michael Eric Dyson is the safe Negro who will gladly shill for the Democrats. Exactly. I was trying to be nice about my critique, Apollo. I was trying. Apollo, you want to be my anger translator? Apollo's like, Apollo comes in like the anger translator's like, look, I'll say what Sabby won't say because Sabby's trying to be nice. I love it. All right, let me let Michael finish.
He's as progressive a figure as is capable of securing the broad base of the Democratic Party in order to represent them.
Eva McKend, CNN, Atlanta.
The broad base of the Democratic Party, which does not include the squad. The broad base includes the moderates, those that are right wing, because the Democratic Party is still right wing. Now, I want to show you something about Hakeem Jeffries, about some of the things that he has done to try to stop progressives. And I think this is important for people to hear. You know, Rolling Stone broke this story earlier this year. Exclusive. Top House Democrat unveils plan to beat back progressive rebellion. House seats are on the line as progressive challenge incumbents. Now, listen to what it says here. Listen to this. A pack of progressive candidates have crashed this year's Democratic primaries, hoping to unseat incumbents and push the party to the left. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, the fifth-ranking Democrat in the House, has other plans. Jeffries and two of his House Democrat allies on Wednesday rolled out the first slate of endorsements from Team Blue PAC. Hold on to that. A political action committee intended to protect incumbents from intra-party attacks. The endorsements and their attendant $5,000 campaign contributions are the strongest demonstration of support yet from Jeffries and his allies, and serve as a warning shot to primary challengers seeking to unseat incumbents as Democrats fight to hold on to their fragile majorities. Again, that was rolled out by Hakeem Jeffries and two House Democrat allies. So Hakeem Jeffries was trying to prevent progressive candidates from winning. So when I say he's against progressive policies, believe me. But there's also something interesting, and this came out the other night. Hold on one second. I can hear someone talking. Thanks. Okay, sorry. Anywho, something dropped last night from Hakeem that might surprise you. So I don't know really what to make of Hakeem at this point. Here we go. Hakeem Jeffries, House Dems' new leader, said Tara Reade's Biden accusation should be investigated seriously. I kid you not. This published December 1st. That was yesterday. Let me show you. Now, this is a story that most Democrat politicians don't even want to touch. They don't even want to touch it. But let me show you what he said. Now, there's Tara Reade. Tara's been on the show multiple times. I stand in solidarity with Tara Reade. She knows this. But listen to what he said. House Democratic Caucus Chairman Hakeem Jeffries, who was elected Wednesday by House Democrats to succeed Speaker Nancy Pelosi, said during the 2020 presidential election that Tara Reade's sexual assault allegation against President Biden needs to be investigated seriously. Jeffries made headlines in April 2020 after he broke with his party to lend credibility to claims made by Reade, a former Biden staffer who accused Biden of cornering her at a Senate office building in 1993 and sexually assaulting her. Multiple people have corroborated parts of Reade's story since she first spoke out March 25th, 2020. But Biden and his campaign vehemently denied the claims. It's got to be taken seriously because this is a serious allegation raised by a serious individual and needs to be investigated seriously. We've probably got to hear more from Biden at some point directly. Now, some of you, I think a lot of you already know Tara's story, but she was not the only one who accused Joe Biden. There were multiple women that came forward. And I just have to say this, like, people are asking, like, why would he be so willing to push it? And I have a theory. I could be wrong, but just go with me. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the plan from some of the Democrats in the party is to find a way to push Joe Biden out. That way Kamala can assume his position, which would also be terrible. She's terrible too. I'm starting to wonder, because I told you guys about this before. There were some of the Democrats did not want him. They did not want him there. And I wonder if that's part of it. Especially now, like that tweet thread that came out by Matt Taibbi that me and Misty were going over just a couple minutes ago. One of the things that is revealed is that Twitter censored the Hunter Biden laptop story. Now that he's been tweeting all of that, I he probably still tweeting now. I don't even know, but it's a long thread. But it makes you wonder, because now if Elon Musk is collaborating with Matt and they decide, and Elon decides, yes, we're going to go ahead and release it, what's going to happen? What's going to be the blowback from that? Because like I said, mainstream media, for the most part, didn't want to touch it. You talked about it on YouTube. YouTube pulled the video. Those of us in independent media. So now, I don't know. I'm starting to wonder. But that's just where my mind's at. And I could be wrong. But if I'm not, remember this. Remember this. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Delthea. Notice how at the ACC championship this weekend, UNC will not be partnering with Clemson because that would be stupid. I love the sports reference. Exactly. Oh, man. Thank you for the super chat, Colin. Have people forgotten that Hakeem was sitting next to Bowman when Jose called him out, RE Ukraine? I remember that. I remember that video. That's right. Emoji. I guess we need communists in the Democratic Party for AOC to become a mainstream representative of the base. Well, speaking of that, we're diving into our next story. This is the big story of tonight because I have so many receipts. I hope you have popcorn or tea or, whatever kind of beverage you want to partake in. And we're going to talk about this on Call-In tonight. So the House and the Senate did vote on the railroad worker strike contract. By the way, I will have one of the members, they're going to come on next week one of the railroad workers. They're going to come on to talk about this as well. So the House and the Senate voted. Let me explain to you how this happened. They decided to do two different bills here. So one bill was the actual contract that would prevent them from going on strike. They did not include the sick leave pay as a part of that bill. The 7-day sick leave was a separate bill. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, then you may remember Build Back Better, because this is the same thing that happened with Build Back Better, where the agreement was that both have to pass together, right? Ro Khanna said that on multiple media outlets, and so did Pramila Jayapal. But in the end, they caved and decided, well, we had to get one of them to pass, so we just did the one and not the other. So one passed and the other didn't. All right, now that I took you back to that, let's come back forward. Similar situation. So this time around, the contract bill, which basically told them, you got to get back to work, you cannot go on strike. Of course, that bill passed in the House, no problem. That bill passed in the Senate, no problemo. But the 7-day sick leave bill, unfortunately, it passed in the House, but it did not pass in the Senate. And this is exactly what I was afraid of. This is exactly what I predicted would happen when you split them instead of including it all as one. Now, the squad, they're making a lot of excuses. Everybody out here making excuses as to why they did what they did. But tonight, I'm going to show you who voted which way and why they voted that way. I'm even going to show you a couple people who decided not to vote at all. Some you might be surprised by. But let's kick this off with Kshama Sawant, because she called it out clear as day. All but one of the squad crossed the picket line, voting with Dem Republican majority to break a rail worker strike. A socialist cannot be a strike breaker. This should result in expulsion from DSA. Failing that, the squad's betrayal of workers becomes DSA's betrayal. And I'm glad she referenced DSA here, because I think it is important to note that they do represent Democratic Socialists of America. And there are certain policies that that organization has. And from what I've seen, there are some policies that the squad has not been implementing. They have not been following, and they have not been implementing those policies at all. Let's all remember, if we flash back towards last year when I told you that DSA, National DSA, wanted to remove Jamal Bowman because he violated their policy about Israel, because he went over to Israel multiple times, which is actually, that's not something that DSA is for. So there's been multiple situations about this where they have basically been violating what is in the DSA handbook. So Kshama Sawant hit the nail right on the head. No, a socialist would not do that, but they're not really socialist. And I told you they're coming up with a lot of excuses, and I just want to let you know it's not just me who's calling out their BS. Even people like Anna Kasparian is calling them out. Listen to this.
AOC, for instance, again, yesterday tweeted, railroad workers grind themselves to the bone for this country as their labor produces billions for Wall Street. They demand the basic dignity of paid sick days. I stand with them. If Congress intervenes, it should be to have workers' backs and secure their demands in legislation. I agree, AOC, I totally agree with you on that. So I was really happy to find that you voted no on the legislation that you spoke out against just yesterday.
I kid you not. Like the tweet that AOC made, obviously that's not what she followed. Jamal Bowman too. We're going to get to him in a second, but I already told you guys before he's the weakest link. So you don't expect him to do anything really. But they put out these tweets, which I thought was a bad idea. They put out these tweets and then they voted against what they tweeted. They didn't even vote the way that they tweeted. And you got to ask, like, if people like Anna Kasparian is calling this out, you know, it has to be embarrassing. Because the people over at TYT that are telling you still support the squad, still go out there and support them, help them, canvass for them, volunteer for them. You have to try to give them a chance. It's embarrassing to see them just constantly not do what they say they're going to do. And then you're telling your audience all this time, you need to support them, give them a chance. But, you know, pride.
Except you didn't. You voted for the legislation you spoke out against on Twitter yesterday. See, I hope people understand that tweets don't necessarily translate into actions. And in this particular case, the only progressive who voted no on preventing the rail workers from striking was Rashida Tlaib. And
we're going to get into that in a second.
Deserves a world of credit for that. Now, let's get to the other part of it, right? The other part of this effort was to vote on legislation, a separate bill that would provide some paid sick leave. How did that do? Well, as David Dayen wrote on Twitter, the paid sick leave amendment got 3 Republicans in the House. Hard to see how it'll get 10 Republicans in the Senate. But as you can see from the graphic that he embedded in that tweet, you have the majority of the votes in favor of paid sick leave for the rail workers. So in other words, both bills did in fact pass in the House. It's good that they passed the legislation that would provide the paid sick leave. I'm happy about that, but I am not happy that Congress did in fact vote in favor of preventing the strike from happening in the first place. And if I were one of the progressive lawmakers, I would have voted no on one of the bills, the one intervening, and I would have voted yes on the other bill that provides an amendment that provides the sick leave that the workers not only demand, but absolutely deserve and should have as part of the new contract.
But Anna says this as though she really expected them to do that. I didn't expect them to do that. In fact, when I first heard about this, the first thing I said is, watch, they're going to fuck this up too. I didn't expect them to go against the majority of their party members in the House and be the lone wolf. I didn't expect them to do that. When have they done that? Now, we're not going to show you too much of Anna because I think she's just ridiculous at this point. Because you got to get it by now. The writing's been on the wall. But Jamal Bowman, he was another one. He tweeted a certain way. And by the way, people really called him out for this. Listen to this. So Jamal Bowman said, listen, I can't in good conscience vote for a bill that doesn't give rail workers the paid leave they deserve. We fumbled this in Build Back Better. We can't do that again. And then he goes and does that again. Yes, Lee. Yes. It's so, you know what I'm saying? So the people like in the comments section, this one. Oh, that's not the one I saw. Thank you for not blindly falling in line. Like some of the comments, people are like, what the? And then in turn, this is exactly what he did. See, Birkin says here, yeah, you did though. That was exactly what he did. He did what he said he would not do. It's a joke at this point. It's an absolute joke at this point. Now, to that point, Rashida Tlaib did decide to do the right thing. She decided to do the right thing. So Rashida Tlaib said this: I grew up in a union household. Collective bargaining is a key to economic justice. Today, our Congress not only voted to impose a contract on workers who rejected it, but the GOP and Manchin also failed to include the sick days workers were demanding. Shameful. So she was the only one that was willing to stand up to it. But again, don't go clapping your hands for her either, because like I said, this is just the rotating villain of the month. Because if it wasn't her, it probably would have been Ilhan Omar. I told you they take turns to decide who's going to be that one. They got to have at least one of them do it. So you also have to think about where Rashida Tlaib lives. Like, she represents Michigan, the Detroit area, right? So there's a lot of people that grew up in that area that know how beneficial unions can be. And I think that's important to know as well. But she was the only one. And she went on to say, I'd like to see any of these senators work a single month on a railroad. Then maybe they'd manage to find it in their hearts to put working families first instead of billionaire railroad bosses. And she ends here with, no worker should be forced to have to choose between their health and a paycheck. Out of the squad members, she's the only one that voted the way that they said that they would. The only one. Now, when it comes to the Senate, there were a few that decided they were not going to vote in favor of preventing the railroad workers from striking. Notice I said few. There were few. And Nina Turner actually called this out. Now listen to this. Democratic caucus senators voting to not break the railroad strike. So that's Warren, Sanders, Hickenlooper. I forgot about that guy. Damn. Gillibrand, Merkley. By the way, that's Merkley, not Markey. Just want to point that out for people who might think. Everyone else voted against the workers. So when it came to the Senate, these 5 did not vote in favor of the workers not being able to go on strike. Now, obviously, we expected Bernie Sanders to be for that. I wasn't sure about Gillibrand. I was kind of surprised to see that one. I don't even know who Merkley is, to be honest. Just keeping it real. Elizabeth Warren, she can be a hit or miss sometimes. But those 5, everybody else supported them going back to work and not being able to go on strike. Almost everybody else. Because there were some people who decided not to vote at all on both measures. Now, we're going to get to that in just a second. Because first, I want to show you who voted against the sick leave, the 7-day sick leave. Listen to this. Wait till you hear who supported it. This is some crazy shit. So I tweeted this. I said, told you so. 6 Republicans voted for sick leave measure. 6 Republicans, you guys. Mike Braun, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, John Kennedy, and Marco Rubio. They all supported the railroad workers getting 7 days sick leave. But you know, Senator Joe Manchin was the only Democrat to vote against it. He was the only Democrat to oppose it. Now, if you're doing some math here in your head, you're like, wait a minute. That's not all the votes. That's not all of the people. You're correct. But first and foremost, Why is it, how the hell does Joe Manchin allow Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley, don't know the other dudes like that. How the hell does he let them vote along with his party and he chooses not to? Look, if Lindsey Graham is telling you, yes, we need to give them sick days, that should be an alert for you, bro. How you let Lindsey Graham do this, but not you? Now, Joe Manchin went on to say that he thought it would set a dangerous precedent. The fuck is that? You mean the president of people should have paid sick leave? How is that dangerous? Or maybe the precedent of people should have 7 days paid sick leave. Still, how is that dangerous? Because I can tell you, members of Congress, they're not getting 1 day paid sick leave. I think they have unlimited sick leave last time I saw. So is that a dangerous precedent, Joe Manchin? Is it a dangerous precedent for members of Congress to have unlimited sick leave? No, it's not. No, it's not. But like I said, those weren't all the votes. Let's see who decided not to vote. Now, this is the one that I think some of you are going to be like, oh, hells no. Hells no. Now, I have two resolutions here. I want to make sure. I think I have two links. I don't know what happened there. Let's go ahead and pull this up. You guys can actually see this on your own as well. What happened here? Oh, there we go. You can see this on your own as well. If you go to U.S. Senate or Senate.gov, you can see all the bills. Now, I went ahead and made this easier for you guys. I went to the one I wanted to see. But all you have to do is click on the number. I want to make sure I went to the right one. Is this the, yeah, 8015. Okay, 8015. So this was the one in reference to the contract, whether or not they were going to go back to work and not be able to strike. So this passed 80-15. Let me show you who didn't vote. Here we have the non-voters. Burr from North Carolina did not vote. Hyde Smith from Mississippi did not vote. Murphy from Connecticut did not vote. And hello, Raphael Warnock, who is now in the middle of a runoff in Georgia, decided not to vote at all. And here's the thing. Some people are saying that he didn't vote because he is in the middle of the runoff and he thought it would hurt the runoff or whatever. You knew it was going to pass anyway. So why not show whether you support it or not? I don't like the non-voters, man. The whole non-voting thing is just weird to me. It's like, I'm not going to say, oh, workers' livelihood is on the line here. Yeah, I'm just not going to vote. So how does Raphael Warnock feel about the situation? We don't know because he decided not to vote. I'm sorry, Colin. I'm sorry, Colin. Oh, Colin's like, oh, hell no. Crazy, right? He didn't vote. Now, it's not just him. Like I said, I pointed out the other ones, but also, I think I put the wrong. I need to go to the other bill because I think I put this twice. Is this 80-50? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. Now, this is the voting results for the sick leave. Now, this is the one that did not pass in the Senate. So there were 5 that did not vote. 5 that did not vote. Let's see who they were. Let's go down. Not voting. Cory Booker's whack ass. Burr from North Carolina. Hyde Smith from Mississippi. Murphy from Connecticut. And hello, Raphael Warnock from Georgia. So I have a question for you guys. Does Raphael Warnock not feel that those railroad workers deserve to have 7 days paid sick leave? This is the thing. Whether you knew it was going to pass or not, why didn't you support it? That's the thing that bothers me. That's what bothers me. Same thing with Cory Booker and Cory Booker to not vote at all. Where's your solidarity with the workers? Where's your support with the workers? Just nothing? I'm sorry, falsification. Cory Booker's whack ass. I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. So I thought people might want to see that. I thought you guys might be curious to see that some people just decided, meh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans did not vote. That's 5. Let's go back up to the top, because when you look at the vote, terrible. Terrible. And that's what I'm telling you. Some of them probably thought, well, we know it's not going to pass, so we're just not going to participate. It doesn't matter. People need to see if you support it or not. And you got a runoff happening? Okay. Now, there was a little bit of squabble about this on Twitter. Ryan Grimm did chime in and said that the squad voted exactly the way that the union wanted them to vote. Let's see what he had to say. And then I'm going to show you something that the union put out. So Ryan Grimm chimes in and says there seems to be a lot of confusion here about the vote yesterday. The unions wanted the Progressive Caucus and the squad to vote the way that they did so they could fight in the Senate. First of all, that don't make any sense. Why would you want to fight in the Senate when you got Joe Manchin on your team? You can disagree with that strategy, but it's the one the union settled on. Here's that word again, strategy. Now, he goes on to say, the strategy lets them fight in the Senate where they'll almost certainly lose. But they reason that almost certainly losing is better than certainly losing, which is what they were headed for in the House. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Which is what they were headed for in the House, because Pelosi had the vote she needed to impose the bad agreement. He goes on to say, if your theory is that the squad should ignore what the union wants, that's fine, but make the argument for why that's the right thing to do. Now, that's what Ryan Grimm is saying here, but that's interesting because even TYT, even they're not saying that. Now, when Shahid Buttar was here, he did explain that Ryan Grimm has a direct line to AOC, so he can just contact her while a lot of others cannot. And that shows because she responded here, yes, and not just national leadership either. We follow the strategy, ask of our local unions, including rank and file we've picketed alongside before, like 202, as well as nationals that rejected ratification. In New York 14, locals' ask was yes, yes, so we could send paid sick to the Senate. Why would you send paid sick leave to the Senate when you have Joe Manchin in the Senate? So that's what Ryan Grimm said, and that's what AOC said. Now, it sounds like to me, Ryan Grimm, he probably got that source from AOC because she responded directly. See how she responded to certain people. But what exactly did the union say? Because you see, they put out a statement. And I saw this morning. So let's see what the union actually had to say. Now, this is the press release from the Railroad Workers United press release. I'll make this bigger because tiny people. Now, this was released again today, December 2nd, 2022. Democrats, then Republicans smite rail labor. Listen to this, you guys. While Railroad Workers United finds it despicable but not surprising, that both political parties opted to side with big business over working people yesterday and vote against the interests of railroad workers not once, but twice within hours. We suffered a 1-2 punch at the hands of, first, the Democratic Party. Second, the What was that? We suffered a 1-2 punch at the hands of, first, the Democratic Party. Second, served up by the Republicans. The Railroad Workers United, they're blaming both parties. Both. But yet I'm seeing politicians on Twitter say it's all the Republicans' fault. This is the statement from the organization telling you that they're blaming both parties. Let's go on. First, responding to the wishes of President Biden and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the House voted to legislate a contract that the majority of U.S. freight rail workers had previously voted to reject. The Senate would quickly follow suit. In effect, their actions simply overrode our voices and desires. Rail workers, like all workers, should have the right to bargain collectively and to freely engage in strike activity if and when the members see fit and when they democratically elect to do so. Bring it on back for the people in the back. Again, the House voted to legislate a contract that the majority of freight rail workers had previously voted to reject. So I'm a little bit confused because Ryan Grimm is saying one thing, AOC is saying one thing, Rashida Tlaib split from the whole pack and was like, nah. Jamal Bowman is saying something else. Everybody, they're all over the place. And those are responses on Twitter. But this is a press statement. So if it were up to you, who are you going to listen to? The people tweeting? Or are you going to listen to the press statement from the actual Railroad Workers United? Let's go on. Railroad workers, like all workers, should have the right to bargain collectively and freely engage in strike activity if and when members see fit and when they democratically elect to do so. Within hours of the Senate vote sealing our fate on Thursday afternoon, we would suffer a second defeat, this time at the hands of the other party of big business, the Republican Party. That bill, which would have been mandated that all railroad workers receive 7 days of paid sick leave, would receive just a handful of votes from Republicans in the House and crucially in the Senate, where it went down to defeat. This 1-2 punch from the two political parties is despicable. That's coming from General Secretary Jason. Politicians are happy to voice platitudes and heap praise upon us for our heroism throughout the pandemic, the essential nature of our work, the difficult and dangerous and demanding conditions of our job. Yet when the steel hits the rail, they back the powerful and wealthy class one rail carriers every time. This is the union calling out the fact that the politicians back wealth, they back the corporations, and they back corporate interest. It's not just me. It's not just RBN. It's not just Hardlands Media. It's not just Jimmy Dore. It's not just anyone that was a part of this Bernie Sanders movement that realized both of these parties are screwing people over. Let's go. Railroad Workers United understands that this fight for justice will continue in the coming months and years. The rail carriers are too powerful and are a scourge to the national economy. They need to be taken into public ownership and run in the interest of workers, shippers, passengers, and the nation, not a handful of wealthy stockholders. That sounds like to me they're calling for a worker co-op. Public ownership of the railroads. What do you know? What do you know? RWU believes the railroad workers need to explore other options than the two existing political parties. Say it again. Explore other options than the existing two political parties, since neither appear to have our backs. RWU also believes that railroad workers need to consider doing away with the archaic and divided craft union system that hampers our unity and solidarity and initiate the process of building a single and powerful railroad workers union that can win future rounds of contract bargaining. We have all played for well over a century by politicians and union officials alike. We have all been played for well over a century by politicians and union officials alike. The fiasco of recent months will show that perhaps the time has come for railroad workers to push for a unified and powerful labor organization of all crafts, together with a political party that will better serve the interests of not just the railroad workers, but all the working class people. And right here is Railroad Workers United calling for a labor party. Eric, can you put the link to this press release in the chat? You can download it to you guys once you get the release. What'd I tell you? What'd I tell you? You see how that work? Is AOC sharing that? Is Jamal Bowman sharing this press release? I don't think so, because I replied to him and I said, this is the press release. So that's that. And we're going to talk about that tonight on Call In. Eric, can we go ahead and look at the poll? Whee! All right, 474 votes. Should Congress intervene with union contracts? 8% said yes, and 84% said no, and 7% said that they are not sure. Interesting. All right, Eric, I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back for call-in. I think we still need to read the super chats in the comments, and I think Rockfin. Thanks. Oh, I think you're muted. Yeah, you're muted.
All right, I got some sound now. Let me see if I can get this sound right.
Yeah, it's just really loud, but I'll be back.
Okay. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, no, it's up real high. Let me try this setting. There we go. All right, I think that's sounding pretty good now. Here we go. I don't want to miss. Let me start that super chat. All right, how's everybody doing? This is the time when we give our Sabrina a little break before the call-in starts. As usual, we'll have, let me post the link for call-in. You can get there on your browser through the link I'm posting in the chat, or you can install call-in on your smartphone and come in that way, and you can tell us what you think of all this. Hang on. All right. Yeah, so we had the poll, big turnout for the no vote on the poll. I also voted no. I mean, my thinking was you just want Congress to stay out of it. I mean, I guess it'd be nice if they could come into it on the side of the workers, but you know they won't. So at this point, better off they just stay out of it. Let's see what we got up here for some chats. We got a few built up. Let's see. Oh yeah, I like this one from Mr. Spanky. If Bernard was really on the side of the workers, then why didn't he put a hold on the Senate bill? That's a good question. I mean, from what I understand, I mean, I know they had a lot of votes for it, but you can slow things down in the Senate if you really tried, if you really want to. Thanks for the super chat, Wendy Melly. AOC had a cop-out excuse about the union wanting her to vote this way, and Ryan Grimm is excusing it too. Yes, and thanks for that. There's this reminds me of another chat. Yeah, that was in here from Meemanson. Uniparty got all the tricks, and that's of course what they do, is they have their ways, and it's just, oh golly gee, they tried, and they just couldn't quite do it, they tried so hard, but what can you do? All right, what else we got happening out here from Cinema Bartab? It's no surprise that they split the bill and sent it to the Senate to fail. They do it on purpose. Yes, true that. From Mr. Roger Meadows, who we'll hear a little bit more on the Rockfin shortly. Merkley, Oregon only senator to endorse Bernie in 2016. Yeah, that's Jeff Merkley of Oregon. And, he's one of these Democrats who plays the game of, he's so progressive, but you know how it turns out in the end when they need the votes, they get them. From J Dubs, I hope my fellow railroaders remember this. Yes. Thanks for the super chat, Natalie Williams. Obama signed an executive order to give federal contractors sick leave. He excluded railroad workers. All Biden has to do is sign the damn order. Yeah, I mean, I think that from what I've heard that as well, that it's very true that that Obama specifically excluded the rail workers. And yeah, I mean, it's the same old thing. It's Biden can do it easily. Any president can. They don't want to. Thanks for the super chat, Natalie. From hitting this from Colin, I tweeted to Ryan Grimm whether it was the union leaders or the workers. I'm talking about when Ryan Grimm was saying, "Oh, it's what the unions want." And, I put in a chat. Yeah, I guess Ryan Grimm is a union whisperer now, and it's that whole thing of is it the workers or is it the leadership that's really giving the opinions and having their opinions heard. And I'll remind everyone again, the Sabby's on a little break, and then we're going to come back and jump into call-in on your computer or on the app. Yeah, we'll hit the call-in link once again in the chat. You can get ready. From Anthony Berg, thanks for the super chat. He's decorating a Christmas tree at work while listening. Yes, and thanks for that. It's that time of the year, of the season. And thanks for this from Lares121. Saw due dissidents CJ and Dorr cover this too. Profits of $18 billion, and he's talking about the railroads. 2 weeks. So for the railroads to give the workers 2 weeks of sick time would cost them $375 million. That's 2%. 8 unions voted for the bad Dem deal. They in those unions are 45% of the railroad workers. 55% of the workers are in those 4 unions who voted no. It's that same old thing. It's not that they can't. It's that they don't want to. And thanks for that super chat, Lorez, and also this one. But Dems are saying, see, 8 unions want it. And Dems, you know what, make you sick. Thanks for those super chats. The call-in will be starting soon. Let's see what we had happening out here on the old Rockfins. Let me do a little switcheroony here. And a little switcheroony here. We got to kick things around a little bit in the background to make our Rockfin magic come up. And here we go from Mr. Roger Meadows on the Rockfin. Thanks for this paid comment on the Rockfin. Roger, hearing Hakeem, I feel like Pete Puma from the Bugs Bunny cartoons. I don't like Hakeem. He gives me a headache. Well, what do you like? Coffee. Yee. No, Jay called capitalism a new word we made up. Hip-hop in late 90s to early 2000s were at its peak of opulence, materialism, and yes, capitalism. They have to realize their time has passed. He misses the worship. Maybe we return to the Chuck D's KRS's. Thanks for that, Roger. I think we got a little more out here on the fins. Come on, computer. Let me hit the right button, do a little scrolling. Here we go. And thanks for this paid tip on Rockfin JVB. Thanks for that. All right, let's clear this off, move this here. So let's see, what do we have happening today? We had Comrade Misty on earlier. That was a great segment about Assange, and there was a recent post by Caitlin Johnstone, and she lists out all the lies that the Guardian has told about Assange in the past, and her title was, the Guardian could help Assange by retracting all the lies it published about him. And yeah, they could just do that, and that would help Assange. And the other big news of the day was, of course, Matt Taibbi on Twitter. Mm-hmm. With a monster Twitter thread. That was pretty wild. I was just watching it come in live.
I know. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely check out Twitter, because it's a long thing. If I saw it ahead of time, I could have covered it tonight, but I don't like to. You guys know I don't like to do that. Mm-hmm. I like to take my time and actually look through stuff. So maybe I'll cover it later. But
all right, see you on calling.
Yeah. All right. Crazy times, guys. We are going to do call-in tonight. This is episode 59. Senate blocks the railroad sick leave. Only one squad member voted against blocking the railroad strike. The House split sick pay from the railroad contract bill, only to see sick pay fail in the Senate. Railroad workers now have no guaranteed sick pay. Who is to blame here? And by the way, I do want to add, this is something that Joe Biden can do by executive order. So there's that. So crazy times, guys. We're going to talk about it on call in. I did pin the link to the top of the chat. You guys know I'm not here on the weekend. I'll be back on No, I'm not here Monday. Actually, I will not be here. Unless maybe I might try to do a stream this weekend about the Matt Taibbi thing. Like I said, I don't know for sure. I need to look into it more. I don't like to just jump on and be like, hey, this came out. So stay tuned for that. Sign up for my newsletter if you're not, because that's how you get alerts about my live streams. I don't rely on YouTube notifications for that because it doesn't work well for me with other channels. So if you sign up for my newsletter, the link is pinned in the details portion of every video. You'll get those live stream alerts at least 10 minutes before I go live. So that is that. I'll upload clips this weekend, guys. And other than that, join me over on Call-In. I know this is crazy time. We got to stand with the railroad workers. Like I said, one of them is going to be here next week. I did get that confirmation tonight. So we'll get to hear more from them and hear their side of the story. So let's head on over to Call-In, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.